suggested the idea that National Noetics might be interested in what he's been doing with the talking staff way of communicating. And what I had mentioned is that part of, and Betsy has referred to this many times, the idea of deep listening is for us to learn to connect into a place that is beyond ordinary thinking, beyond that sort of ordinary small mind that goes like yak, 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 always thinking we know the answer, even though we have our own inner conflict about what the right answer should be. And go more into a place where we start to connect up non-locally, where we start to connect up with the big field, with big mind awareness, where we start to, in a sense, clue into kind of a more holographic way of understanding, which is more both and or, rather than either my way or the highway kind of, thinking. And even beyond this, part of what happens, part of how we know when we're connecting up to something, much bigger than ordinary thinking, is by the lovingness that is contained in our dialogue, in our communication with each other. In a sense, whenever we connect into something which is much more holistic, more holographic, what we start to connect up with is a more and or loving way to focus on how we can be more loving together. So I just, Glenn had wanted me to bring this out in relation, and of course it especially applies in a sense to today's topic. I mean, the idea of the politics of gender. I mean, the new politics of gender is more about men and women together rather than either a patriarchal or matriarchal way of seeing the world. So,
all right, before we begin, I wanted to ask Elizabeth if she would say a prayer, setting an intention for this dialogue. Dialogue is like ceremony, so it ought to begin with prayer. So thank you, Elizabeth.
The one field of consciousness in which we are all enmeshed, from which we can never be separated, and the flow of wisdom which we are opening ourselves to allow the flow, and it's a two-way flow. It flows it comes into us at our request, and it flows back into the oneness, and nothing can ever be lost. We give thanks for our connection with the oneness. And then we give thanks for the elements of manifestation. We give thanks for the air. And among the eagle feathers that have come to me over the years is also a condor. The big birds that spread their wings and bring us the excitement of breath and air and the stuff of the thought. Blessings and thanks to the fire that rises in our hearts. And warms not only our environment and ourselves, but goes out and warms the world. And thank you, water. Thank you, water of which we are made. Thank you for the refreshment and the flowing and the many lessons that are of our substance. Thank you, water and the earth.
Thank you.
The earth and its golden glory. Thank you, earth. Thank you for all your phases and your teachings. Thank you for being the stuff of which we are made, so that it may be that our thinking rises out of the combination of our connection with the oneness and our connection with our roots in the earth, our thought coming up through our bones, through our gut, through our heart, through our intuition, and lastly, through our rational minds. Thank you for these dimensions of thought and for our root in the earth. Thank you. And thank you for the privilege and the honor and the richness of being able to hold this circle. Thank you for being part of this circle. Blessings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a beautiful beginning. Thank you for the prayer. Thank you for the opening. Thank you for words about dialogue, too. I'm going to add some more words about dialogue so that we can be clear on the process, because that's super important, so we know what we're doing. There's so many ways to do dialogue, and there's so many meanings of the word dialogue. You know, some people refer to dialogue, they open up a screenplay, and the words on the page are called the dialogue. You know? Other people sometimes think that a dialogue is a conversation between two people, like a dyad. But as David Bohm taught us, or taught me anyway, the actual meaning of dialogue comes from the Greek, dia meaning through, and logos meaning the word or meaning. So for a dialogue circle, the most important thing is for meaning to flow through to the group. And that's why we leave an opening, because that represents. And it's not just a representation, it's real. So spirit coming in through the room and moving through the room. When at Seed we did dialogue circles, we were blessed many years, perhaps some of you know him. Joseph Rael, a beautiful painted arrow, came to many of our circles. And he's a seer. He saw things I didn't see, but he saw the swirling thought forms, the energy, the colors that were moving through the room, and blessing everyone, really. I feel it. I kind of feel it more in my gut. And I notice that in a good dialogue circle, I may think I'm thinking something, but right there, Jan is opening her mouth and she's saying it. That's when we know we're cooking. That's when we know we're in a shared field. And that's when we know we're a conduit for whatever we're speaking about. That's when we moved away from our own just local personal consciousness that the myth that mainstream society believes in. Now here, we're gathered at the, an IONS gathering, Institute of Noetic Sciences, so this is not a radical concept to you. You're probably not of the belief that you have a separate little consciousness housed in your brain and that it's completely distinct from other people. You already know that you're sharing a field. So dialogue, it is very necessary to set aside what David Bohm and Leroy Little Bear, my mentor in the dialogue, referred to as tacit infrastructure. And I actually usually just like to take things out of my pockets. It's just my way, you don't have to do it. But one year at a dialogue circle, Leroy suggested people take off their shoes. Whatever it is, your tacit infrastructure, and I got lots of tacit infrastructure in my pockets. Your tacit infrastructure is really what it is the set of beliefs, assumptions, your upbringing, maybe your race or your ethnicity or your gender or what school you went to, what part of the country, what part of the world you were born in. Whatever it is, what Carlos Castaneda referred to as your controlled folly. This is what you're kind of carrying around with you, which is somewhat of a subtle pretense of who we are. So I'm going to suggest, as much as possible, and this is easier said than done, but as much as possible, you set aside your tacit infrastructure and be open to what spirit is moving through the room, moving through you, listening to that. The most important thing in dialogue is listening. And when someone else is speaking, you're listening for the purpose of understanding, not to ready your reply. Perhaps some of you have read Gibran. He spoke about in normal conversation, thinking is half murdered, he said. And it's true that in a discussion, which is etymologically related to percussion, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of back and forth. I grew up in New York. It was really extreme there. It was a ping pong match, a conversation. It was as fast as you could send it back to somebody else, and that's stimulating in a certain kind of way, but it also doesn't get you very deep. It does not get you deep. What I've learned from dialogue circles is to slow down. And when you slow down, then something deeper and more magnificent seems to come through, seems to bubble up, come through the room, come through all of us. So it's a beautiful thing. So that's really critical, listening. Of course, I think everybody already realizes this beautiful staff, which was carved by Ruben Medina, a Taos resident who's not feeling well today, or he would be here. In fact, he's going for a CT scan right about now.
I wanted to offer prayer for him. I talked to him yesterday.
We are offering a prayer for him, absolutely, and for all that need healing. Through this circle, we'll be reaching out to all. So Ruben is very much here, because he's represented here by this beautiful staff that he carved. So when you have the talking staff, then obviously you have the floor. That way you can floor people with what you say. So, anyway, there's a lot of ways of doing dialogue circles. What we're going to be doing is a hybrid of David Bohm's dialogue process and what I've learned from Leroy Little Bear, Plains Indian Talking Circle. We combined them together at the Seed Institute, where we did this for a decade and a half. They're really very similar. They both have no expectation of a result and no agenda. We're not going to form an action committee, afterwards to take up what we discussed here, but it will have an effect in the subtle realm. That's at least my experience, is that dialogue has an effect in the subtle realm, and you may dream on it, you may draw on it, it may draw forth something from each and every one of us later on. And if that happens naturally, that's absolutely beautiful. One difference between Boehm's dialogue circle and what we're going to be doing is that myself as moderator, I am going to throw out a kickstart question. As Elizabeth was alluding to, the question can be important to get us started. As we go into the dialogue takes a life of its own, and I will add other questions to the soup, but like stone soup. But when I add a question to the soup, you're still very much permitted to answer the first question if there's still something that is bubbling up for you in that first question, and address the second question. So this way the questions are hopefully interwoven in a way that just takes us, it's a different facet on the diamond, really. There's many ways to look at things. There's certainly many ways to look at gender relations, or the politics of gender relations, which is our topic today. So the first round I'm going to go sunwise. I'm going to be handing the talking staff to Jan and going sunwise. It's possible by the second round or third round, I'm not certain, I will go to popcorn style. And popcorn style just simply means that if you want to speak, you get my attention in some way that you want to be acknowledged, and then I will acknowledge you. It's not exactly like school, though. You don't have to, it's not about who raised their hand first or something, So, in any case, you'll get my attention, and then we'll be able to. The pace may accelerate a little bit, but that's fine. So dialogue has a momentum of its own. Okay, I'm going to set up the first question. Wow. This is a very big topic, the politics of gender relations. I want to start by looking at nature. Nature is full of mutual reciprocities. Day and night, sun and moon, Father Sky, Mother Earth. There's mutual reciprocities that are in nature. But it also, and you might call these feminine and masculine. Many people have. Not every culture thinks of the sun as masculine, although probably the preponderance of cultures do. And the preponderance of cultures think of the moon as feminine, but that's just one way of looking at it. In nature, we also have some, I think, 85,000 species that have both male and female characteristics in the same body. So we've got the invertebrates that are full of this. We've got slugs. I don't know if anybody have ever seen slug pornography. It's not really pornography. It's incredibly beautiful. And I'm not sure whether it's masturbation or I think it's sex, because it's the male and female characteristics in the same body, and they do this beautiful dance. So it's a very amazing thing. And there's also double-sex beings in plants. There's many plants that are double-sex beings, and some fish that are double-sex beings. But I also find it interesting that in human history, or in human stories anyway, told to us by Plato, the most prominent person, there's the story of human beings being once double-sexed beings within the same body. In Theosophy, they don't think of that as a myth. If any of you have read Madame Blavatsky, or that Theosophical school believes, actually, that human beings evolved in accord with the earth, or the human monad. It wouldn't look anything like what we call a human being today, but the human monad, in Theosophy, they believe that it evolved in accord with the earth. So when the earth was a fluid, welling mass, so was the human monad. And then at some point, the human monad becomes a double-sexed being within the same body. And then there was this separation of the sexes. There was this separation of the sexes that occurred, which could be analogous to the point in Christianity where we talk about Adam and Eve, being aware of their bodies. Being aware. Could be. But our topic is gender, the politics of gender relations. So I also want to look at the word gender. Look at the etymology of the very word. So Elizabeth referred to it earlier. She used genius, genus, genius. It's related to gender. It's also related to the French genre, which means a kind or a sort. But it is related to genius, it's related to generative, it's related to generous, it's related to genuflect, it's related to genitals, it's related to a lot of generative ideas, actually. So gender is a very generative idea, and hopefully that will help us. So my first question for you, that I'm going to throw out, and if you need any time, I'll tell a story. But is gender a biological classification or a social construct? Is gender a biological classification or a social construct? If you need time, I'll tell a story otherwise.
So is gender a biological classification or a social construct? My experience is that it's both. And I have only found one reference that clarified this for me, and it's in a book called Remarkable Women, where a Roshi explains that we must all come to peace with this gender issue within our own consciousness before we can have a kinship. So what that means to me is that at some point in the alchemical process of us coming in divisively as male or female physically, which seems to be very mixed up these days embryologically. We're in kind of a heyday these days on that subject. The resolution to the biology and the cultural question is within ourselves. And the exploration of that is extraordinary for each one of us. And the compassion that is required to have that sacred marriage and understanding within our own hearts, and that peace embodied within our own lives is ineffable in a way. But here we are in a dialogue circle talking about this issue that seems to be on the platform in our politics in an extraordinary way for the first time ever. And it is such a deep resolution that I just sense within my own beingness essential to feel both, feel everything, and know that. And I think the movie Orlando helped me a lot also. Tilda Swinton was in that, where she portrayed lifetime after lifetime back to back, being male, female, back and forth. And it was like bringing myth into Hollywood, into our private homes. I personally forget that I have this exteriorization when I'm relating with people until I'm reminded by the cultural aspect and how somebody responds or engages with me. Then I am sometimes shocked back into, oh yes, I am an adult woman who's gone through menopause. But the rest of the time, I just find it very simple to interact just from existence itself. So I'm very interested in what everybody's going to say on this subject, because I think it's very individualized for each one of us. And then I see the upcoming generations are dealing with an extraordinary identity crisis. And so I hope that we can, through our prayers and presence today, bring some awareness and blessings to this issue.
If you're complete.
Thank you.
This is an amazing time I think we're living in regarding this issue. And in terms of the bio and cultural definition, I think the cultural is the strongest influence, I feel, I've experienced as a woman, more than the biomechanical. You know, I think women can become physically strong and do a lot of, are physically strong. Besides all of that, I think the cultural is where we've been struggling for many. You know, for me personally, in my evolution, in the beginning of my one of my professional careers, I had the opportunity to be part of a community that dealt with sexual violence and things like that for women. We were as part of the Rape Crisis Center in Santa Barbara, California. And the women that put the center together that was dealing with violence against women really came at it from an issue of power, and that it was an issue of violence and power, and not about a sexual, that didn't come from a sexual motivation. It became part of it. And they were very, it was at the time when feminism hadn't been put under the carpet or looked down on, you know. I think that there was a time when feminism was really alive, and then it became unpolitically correct. You know, you know what I'm talking about, maybe. But it was very strong, and so I was very influenced by the kind of education and talking I was getting, and I was a therapist, so I was dealing with clients and people, And it kind of flavored my perspective. It opened my eyes, like, to things about racism, about any kind of power differential that existed in our culture. It really opened my eyes to racism, actually. So any ism that was out there, it raised my consciousness too. And it was very difficult to see and hear things that were both subtle and not so subtle culturally, that demonstrated these different, power differentials. So this election, as you can imagine, this time we're living in, I am tuned into it. I'm not tuned out of it, and I find it amazing what's happening, consciously and unconsciously around us, and moving us, and what our planet really is holding at this time. The feminine throughout history, the feminine is really a very important aspect for balance, on every level. And I hope that we are making some concerted progress with that, and I'm thankful to be in the circle and whatever's going on in that space there, into the world. Thank you.
I think the question itself sends us into duality. I mean, the topic is duality. And that's not my experience. I don't think it's probably the experience of many people in this room. I think that rather than biology or culturally, I think it's an issue of worldview. If it's an issue. I'm not so sure if there's an issue. It's my experience that I've been brought through stages of development. Not that I've done it myself or learned something or been taught something, or I feel, like I've been beckoned that, come along, learn something bigger, learn something larger. And that I think everybody's going in that direction. And that, so without, it's showing what's within. And I'm very glad to be an elder person. I look around, most of us are not young. And something comes along with that. I think lessening of duality, for sure. Lessening of the distinction masculine, feminine. We look, I think women as they grow older, there's still that softness, but we're not afraid to be strong or assertive, and we're not trying to be, quote, feminine. We're not trying to split. We're joined. And it's my experience in meditation and contemplation and physical exercise, and when I'm making love, that there's no separation. There's no occurrence of the separation. So I'm not so sure there's a question to answer. I'm glad to have the opportunity to listen to what others have to say about it. And with that,
thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. Thank you.
I've been surprised
I've been surprised how much gender has come up in this election. It seems to me like there has been an underlying misogyny that I had not been so aware of lately that is going on with Hillary. And certainly Trump is an embodiment of a lot of misogyny. So it's surprised me. It's still out there. From my own experience, I remember when I was very little, it seemed like my dad had it better than my mom. At least my mom was unhappy and kind of stuck at home with the children. And my dad was a farmer, but he could go out and he could get things. He could go get seeds, he could go get parts for, and he was running around out there and he was outside and mom was stuck at home. And it just seemed to me like there was something that made her very unhappy with that arrangement. And so then I grew up in the time of consciousness raising, and when women were working on taking back some power that it felt like they didn't have. Unequal pay, issues of domestic violence, sexual violence, and I was involved with raising my own consciousness and helping other women. And then there came a time when that just didn't seem so important, at least personally to me. And so it has been a real shock to see that some of that is still there. And I think it gets expressed with people saying, well, they just don't like Hillary. I like her. So I do think that there is definitely a social context with gender. But for sure, biology is a part of it too. There's a factor. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for those thoughts.
Thank you.
Is gender a biological classification or a social construct?
Well, first I'd like to say that I have felt a shift in energy already. I mean, even just starting with the first person. And I'm feeling that there's a difference when one is in the intellect and in the material world and in those sorts of energies. There's always a shift when one is focused on the heart, our bigger brain. And there's a huge contrast between that kind of energy and what you were talking about, Linda, which I also am shocked about. But I also feel that there has to be some reason that it's happening, that is part of the shift that we're going through. And sometimes I find it very scary, the kinds of things that have been said, the behaviors, that at a deep level, I feel that it's just part of the shift. And I think when one is engaged in the heart,
part energy, that differentiation between male and female doesn't really matter. It kind of disappears, for me anyway. And I'm delighted that we're able to have this dialogue circle. It's really quite a gift. And I've been looking forward to it. So I'm going to pass. Todd, please stick to Betsy.
I want to pick up on your idea of the shift happening. And it interests me a lot, coming from my own beingness, that whatever I'm led to or emerges or needs to be expressed through this instrument that serves a becoming consciousness, because I am a woman, this is part of my femininity. And I'm really interested in I am looking at the stuff that we have been mouthing for quite a while about inner feminine and inner masculine, and that seemed to me like outmoded mental constructs that have to do with old think and are of necessity dissolving in the necessities of new think. That making lists of qualities and attributes and saying, well, these are masculine, these are feminine, that is, to me, absolute nonsense. All of these belong to all of us, it seems to me. And finding spaces in my life where I have had avenues to be more of who I fully am has been part of the dance. To be with what wants to emerge and be with the restrictions and judgments outside, starting with my dear dad, from whom I learned so much, and had the expectation that I would be his handmaiden. I'm not a handmaiden type. In the sense that he wanted me to be. I certainly am a handmaiden to the oneness. But and I realize that in the 62 years that Bob and I have been together, we've had an enormous privilege, which over the years we've only gradually come to recognize and appreciate all the ways that we have been these emerging wholenesses, and those definitions about what and who is masculine and feminine, we've just been doing what we've been doing, emerging. And for all the years, and by the way, the sun under which we did about 30 sun dances was a Celtic sun who was a feminine energy. And it was not about the native way of doing sun dances. It was a different thing that was bestowed upon me. And I was in charge of the dance ground, and Bob was in charge of the kitchen. And he was a genius in all the respects of, and this guy is an absolute world-class, brilliant mathematician. We left Berkeley because they offered him tenure and he couldn't stand the idea of that kind of life. That's how we got to college. But he and a friend of ours ran that kitchen, backpacked in for 30 to 35 people for 2 weeks with a creek and 2 Coleman stoves. And it was very clear that he ran the kitchen and I ran the dance ground. And we didn't have a problem about it. Some people did. And they had to work with that. Because something was coming through me in a way that we completely shared, but there was something given through me to a function to do. And he's always been, he to this day makes statements about it, even in the midst of his dementia. That, well, yeah, but you have to understand that she has this thing. Which is really different at 85 than it was in times before 80, so that the energy does change. And I've read and heard from other women who carry some kind of energy like this, that, oh yeah, it settles off you. And to have the grace to jump for joy and say, woohoo! I don't have to carry what I was carrying before. But I did want to pick up on the thing of being elder women. I do care about that. And it's one of the places that I guess that I feel that the ways that I was contributing are not appropriate now. What is appropriate? Well, being a whole elder, wise woman, and to claim the wisdom, wouldn't you say? To claim our wisdom, to identify it and claim it and be it and expect it to be recognized and accepted and appreciated, wouldn't you say? That's a place that I dwell with the gender in our fullness. Whatever we are, as you mentioned, assertive, that is our female assertion. There is nothing masculine about it. It is us as women, as females, being assertive or being gentle or having good minds that like to think. there's nothing masculine about that. Men have their way of thinking, thank goodness, and so do we. So to be living presences of moving out beyond those constructs that are old think. That's, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this beautiful thought.
Yeah, I was thinking of that individuality in physical or in social, you know, and of course in everything else. And how we, you know, for me, that emptiness and being with, when I first meet somebody or when I'm connecting with somebody, that's what it's all about. Gender comes up later, and I'm not sure how it does. I think it's from my past. You know, somewhere something will pop up that has to do with gender, and so then I have to stop. I don't have to, but I find it beneficial for keeping the connection because the gender thing, for me, starts a distraction, a separation. And I don't want that. So, and sometimes it's just automatic. I just stop in my thought process and pause for a second or two, or maybe more. And then it kind of clears. And I get back to being with that person. It's fascinating, but that's, I mean, this is just my own personal place right now. As an elder male, maybe you can say that too. And I'm so fortunate, I have a number. I've done a lot of men's work in Mankind Project for like, 27 years or something like that. As an elder and working initiations and all that stuff. And that was very revealing, you know, trying to be a man. It was fun, and I learned a lot. But now I seem to have there's 3 women living in my house. I'm having a little birthday celebration Monday, and I picked, out of the 9 people I picked to come, 8 of them are women. I used to hike with men all the time. Now I'm hiking with women all the time. But you know what? It's where I need to be. It's benefiting my own personal growth at this late stage in my life. You know, how to be in that place. It's that time for me. And it's fascinating. I made an incredible spiritual connection with a woman, not my wife, somebody else. And at first it was kind of rough going, because she felt my aggressive energy, like, you really want to get to know me, don't you? It's like, yeah, you're damn right. No. And you know, how do I do what I was talking about? How do I, you know, be close with this person without driving them away? And here it is, a love, somebody I really had this incredible connection with. Well, fortunately, she's been patient enough, and I've been patient enough. And I sat with her Monday, and I said, you know, I just love the way you have allowed me to be your friend, despite the fact that I came with so many rough edges, you know, to be in your life. Because this is something I really need. It's something I'm benefiting from. And it's cool. Really cool. So you never know where life's going to take you. You know, in relationship, in gender. I just, when you talked about physical or social, it's like, well, hell, that's separating. I don't even want to go there. But we don't have any choice, do we? We live in this world. So it's fun learning how to be with it all. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all the sharing. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
So when you know the tide is going out, you know that the time when you can actually do this is getting smaller. So I did do it for the last time. I knew the tide was going out, and as I was hitting the water, I thought, I'm never doing this again. I have to do something different, and I can't keep doing this.
Mm.
And I think I felt that because I was a woman, I couldn't keep doing this. So that was the beginning of that part of my life when I was a girl becoming a woman, and then a woman who got married and had children and did all those things. And during that whole time, I think that gender and biology is very closely joined. When you get older, once again, you're moving out of that, and you're moving out of a time when there's even, at least in personal lives, a need to obey the rules of gender, let us say, if you don't want to. So it's something that happens throughout everyone's life, I think. It's a thing about living and getting older, as well as all the other things that it can be. And it's very real, and it's a pressure. But it is sort of a mystery to me now, having gotten to the stage where it's no longer a big issue for me. But I see that in the current political situation, it is a big issue for Hillary. Even though she is an older woman who should be able to have this freedom to be more than these labels and constructs. There's a lot of resistance to her doing this, a lot of dissonance and bad stuff coming up around it. And she's sort of stuck in it. She has to play it differently than, say, somebody who achieved elderhood and isn't faced with the kind of problems that she's faced. But I think it really is important to, as some other people have said here, that just as racism came to the fore when Obama was running for office and got elected, sexism is coming to the fore now that Hillary is running for office, or from this office, the office of president. And it brings out all those things that when we are talking about how much progress we're making and how we are shifting and all of this is going to get to a different plane, we're brought up short by what you see out there, that this is being acted out in our country right now by millions of people who have not reached a place of shift and who aren't on another plane. And so it has made me realize that this idea that I have gotten beyond this, just as, people said when Obama was being elected, well, now we're beyond racism. And it didn't seem to happen, and it's not happening now. But I'm part of that too. It's that all of a sudden I see how much all of these different feelings about what's the way the world should be, what's the right order of things in the world, what's the appropriate order of things in this world. And you can hope that you're getting to some point where you don't have to any longer be so concerned about that. But you also, on the other hand, still do have to see it in yourself and everyone else because it's there.
Thank you for those beautiful thoughts. Thank you. Thank you.
It was interesting, the topic, the question you raised. And it's something that within myself I have, if you will, initially the word comes out is struggled with, in the sense that I know within me there's both. There's both the masculine and the feminine. And in the learning experiences that I've had in my life, having grown up on the East Coast and played verbal ping pong and energy ping pong, also been in the corporate world, also been in professional sports. It was as now that I have reached, let's say, the age and the experiences that I've had, I can objectively, if you will, kind of step back and look at them and realize that it's a very, very challenging life that I'll speak for myself that I've chosen. And yet I know, and I've known this since I've been 4 years of age, that this is my last lifetime, in the sense that I have chosen not to leave the physical body. I have chosen to stay fully conscious, fully awake, and fully aware. And that's my choice. Others can do as they choose. That is the most beautiful gift that we have, is to reach a point in our evolution to realize that we no longer have to, if you will, no longer have to separate everything. In other words, I remember when my children were growing up, I was fascinated with Sesame Street, and they would always bring up words, okay? And words are wonderful because, to me, they're an expression of a vibration, okay? And to me, there's two elements that make up everything: consciousness and the energy of consciousness. And when you come to that point, that, if you want to call it that, oneness, what we call unity, the word that I was always fascinated with, because I would sit there with my daughters and listen to it when they were presenting it, was the word all. And they would say all. And they would give examples of all. And I would just saying the word all. It has a power that we have, in a sense, forgotten. We have forgotten that we are, and everything is, all. It comes from one source. And we have created a magnificent game of what I call separation, expectation, and judgment to experience what it's like to forget that we are all one essence, one isness, if you will. And as the wisdom, that's the beauty of, I would say, experiencing and expressing what we think and feel. We get that wisdom. The wisdom that I now know is actually an emotional wisdom. It's not a mental wisdom. It's an emotional wisdom of, oh, I now know what it feels like to think this way, to be this way, to express this way, to do this way. And fortunately, as we say, as we mature or evolve, we come to a point of saying, like Chief Seattle said, I will fight no more forever. And that means, to me, embracing within myself the masculine and feminine aspects, and to have that balance between the two. And the balance to me is both appreciate and acknowledge that essence that exists, that consciousness, that energy, that feeling, those thoughts. And in doing so, I don't do the dance of, I call it ping and pong. I do the dance of appreciation of the beauty that exists everywhere. Even in the insanity that's going on, there's beauty. Or it wouldn't be, okay? And to allow those fellow travelers through this third dimensional consciousness of separation and duality to graduate, to complete whatever it is their soul desires to complete. And we all have different, if you will, stories or different desires. And to become, in a sense, as I've seen, what I would call it, the gurus of life, they have accepted themselves, and they have allowed others to express whatever it is they're expressing. They don't sit in judgment of anyone. They don't see themselves separate from them. Because I would say for myself, having been raised a Catholic, okay, that whole wonderful experience has allowed me to realize that guilt, blame, and shame perpetuates nothing but more guilt, blame, and shame. And that wasn't the message behind the foundation of it. It was truly love and accepting and appreciating everyone, because as I've experienced within my own life now, and being a teacher of let's say, the Melchizedek's information, I realized that when you look into a person's eyes, they say the eyes are the gateway to the soul. And it's true. The Sufis do a dance every morning in all of their monasteries where you look into the person's eyes and you put your hand on their heart and you take their hand and put it on your heart. And you look into their eyes and find that essence within themselves. And you say, "You are my beloved. I open my heart to you." And when you do that with enough people, all of the layers of, let's say, I would call societal belief systems, gender belief systems, etc., they just melt away, like is happening now with the glaciers. They melt away, and you can actually see, sense, and feel the essence, the God essence within them, the spirit essence within them, that is also yourself. And you see within them you, and they see within you themselves. And so for me, as we call it, or the essence of the topic, the politics of it all, there really isn't any. They're just a game we created. And when you realize it, you can say to yourself, okay, now I'm wise enough to listen. I'm wise enough to appreciate. I'm wise enough to accept everyone. The real essence of them. And to me, that is the most humbling, compassionate position to be in, is to just be in that zone of yesness, that acceptance of everyone. And I'm thankful and grateful that the great spirit that has allowed me to be here, allowed me to hold this magnificent creation. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it has allowed me to be insane. It has allowed me to express every emotion, the entire spectrum of emotion that we have as what we call ourselves human beings, or being a person of light and love. And it hasn't stopped me. It hasn't, I call it, taken me out of the body, or I call it enough. That's something I had to do. And I'll finish with my daughters. In my own dark night of the soul, gave me a magnificent reminder. They gave me a statue of a lion with this wonderful jeweled necklace. And the plaque said, "Gentleness is strength." And whenever I get up here instead of in here, there's a switch that says, "Psst, remember, gentleness is strength." And I'm so grateful for that. And through that gift, they also taught me something that, as a parent, they taught me how to truly know what unconditional love is. And that's something for me that was the most important, is to remember what unconditional love is. And I'm grateful and thankful for that. And I'm grateful and thankful for all of you, because you are all, wow.
Thank you.
Thank you for being. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm about to share a sort of different perspective on this inevitable difference, wonderful difference between men and women, gender difference. To me, part of what I have learned over my years, still not really elder, but is that this difference is certainly one of the greatest of all Zen koans ever. And not only is it a huge Zen koan, but it's a cosmically humorous Zen koan. And that part of the learning journey is to really come to embrace and understand the deep, deep humor of this difference. And yet in such a way that we come back into at-one-ment all the time. That we constantly find ourselves, through this humor, coming back into oneness. And so, given that little introduction, part of this difference that I'm about to share is much more practical, in the sense that it comes in having living with a fiery, red-headed Irish woman for some 32 years now. Right? And I mean, Elizabeth, talk about assertion. She has no problems asserting her fire. And in fact, what I've come to appreciate over the years as a man, that I love fire. Fire is what prods my growth. It's what stimulates me to become more compassionate, to become more comprehensively encompassing. Because often, insofar as that fire has to do with our differences, I get challenged. Now, like, the old young Linny raised in, matriarchal, masculine sort of oriented world would have felt that, I'm losing control, right? In terms of the power over game. I'm supposed to be in control of this situation. But actually what it taught me is to let go and see that it's only a momentary flame. It's not a forever. And God knows, one of the wonderful things about Trish, and this is in terms of her growth as a woman learning the other side, she's learned how to be fiery totally for a few minutes, and it's gone. It's done. It was only those few minutes. And it's even beyond forgiveness. It's like, I don't even have to forgive her because she's let it go. It's something for me to feel, take it in, feel how it, in a sense, stimulates me to learn something right, about myself, because she's had the courage to be out there, fully out there with me. And that's one of the things we've learned, is to just be. Going back to Haridas, before I go a little further, one of the songs we invented around Haridas, one of the Kirtan songs, was "Step into the holy fire, step into the holy flame." Okay? Right? Don't avoid that friggin' flame. Learn to engage with it, be your own fire back. If that's what it comes to. Be your own tears back. Be whatever feelings are triggered through this dialogue. Real dialogue, right? Real fire. Because fire is what helps us to grow. That's why it's one of the elements. That's why you talked about the importance of fire. And, part of another thing we've learned in terms of getting past fire being a wall, an impassable wall, rather something to engage with and move forward with, is one of the things we've learned to do is to play this little game we call 2 for 2, which is almost every day now. Tell me 2 things you really love about me. Because it's so easy to get lost in something that is negative. Because, one of the things I'm discovering is that because of our conditioning, because of our self-doubt and lack of self-worth, lack of deeper self-worth, somebody will say something to you and you see the worst in it, right? You immediately go to your self-doubt, your lack of self-worth, and you think you're being attacked, when actually you're being prodded to grow up a little, Okay. So, and taking this around to Hillary, for God's sake, I wish she'd find some of her fire. She's so friggin' masculine, that's part of the problem. And she has a beautiful heart that, we always hear about in some soft, easy, kind of flowing way that, and it doesn't connect because there's no fire. That's what people keep saying about her. I want to hear the depths of her heart come out with fire. Okay, so I become fairly fiery myself. But I also have deep calmness. You know, that's one of the things I give to Trish, is I tend to, you know, my nature is to be kind of more laid back, relaxed, calm about things. And that's probably why I love fire. So, I don't know what else I could say about this, other than there are many things we can do to lighten up with each other. That's part of, you know, the man-woman deepening process. Hear each other. Hear the range of how we feel. And at the same time, really get the cosmic joke of it. Because heaven knows, I mean, we regularly laugh from our bellies together. I mean, the simplest thing can trigger belly.
You're fired up. Okay.
Manifesting and being out there as a fiery warrior, and also somebody that is coming from a place of love and compassion and non-separation. I often talk about this illusion of separation with lots of people in my community, and some people totally understand where I'm coming from and others don't, and that's okay, as long as I'm starting to get it, that we're one. And I'm just really grateful to be in this beautiful circle of souls, of very wise, very insightful, very compassionate, loving beings, and I feel the oneness in this circle. It's interesting that just before I hand it over to Glenn, that I've absorbed all these words and appreciate everything that was said, and I'm also triggered by the way people are saying things and thinking. So I'm looking at that myself, not blaming or judging, but looking at that I still have more work to do around this illusion of separation, I hope.
Thank you. Good. Beautiful round. Wow. Thank you, each and every one of you. That's awesome. Awesome. Okay. I do want to add one other question to the soup. And you're again perfectly free to address if there's more that needs to come out with regard to is gender a biological classification or a social construct that's still here. No vibration ever goes away. No words ever spoken in the circle are gone. They're here. So they can be utilized. I want to bring this to... There are so many beautiful things that were brought up. Wisdom before knowledge. Very good. Thank you. The questions around what really is feminine or masculine are very rich. And I see the beauty in the way that this group is working with that in a very open-minded, open-hearted way. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We want to bring this to something that was written about, we might say, in our modern way a long time ago. I think that's kind of silly. But 1953, Simone de Beauvoir wrote The Second Sex. It's a really powerful magnum opus. And in her
in her book, her primary thesis is that women and the feminine have been defined by men.
Yeah.
And that the masculine is just taken to be the human. You know, and that's what she's writing, and making a very powerful case for. So it seems to me that that's still going on. However, that's also up to all of you to think about whether you think that's changed or not. But I want to ask you, in terms of what she said, you know, I want to ask one question. I want to ask is, what is the divine feminine, if anything? Okay. And I'm going to put that question out, and it's putting it out popcorn style, but I want to encourage the women to answer, because to reverse what happened in history, and by the way, history is not a sexist word, just so you know. It comes from the Greek historia, which doesn't come from his story. So anyway, it comes from taking an in-depth history, like a psychotherapist might take of a client or something. So it means it didn't used to be about slices of time, you know, so it meant going in depth. So we can go in depth in that sense. What has changed? Is the feminine and women still being defined by men? Many times in our circle came up the current political election. Is that still being defined by men? If you want to go there and address whether Hillary Clinton is boxed in or whether she has the freedom to create her own.
Her choice.
It's a very difficult question, but so what has changed, if anything? So there's two questions for the women, particularly. What is the divine feminine? And what has changed, if anything, in the way that the feminine and women are defined in the culture today? Who would like to speak to that? Oh, she wants to.
I would like to speak.
You can speak.
I found it overwhelmingly beautiful to listen to all of you today, and how much I don't know who you are until we had this type of opportunity where you could speak from your hearts. And it's like a privilege. I feel like it's the only time we are communicating is when we are speaking from our hearts. Everything else is just, and I felt like I saw and felt your authenticity and your being when each of you spoke. It was pretty mind-blowing for me in this type of circle and setting. I'm a sannyasin, so I've been with a master and had states of consciousness, which at that point in my life, I was my being. Once I felt my being, I'm totally feminine, and yet I have male and female energy. We all do. And I think anytime you are, I was in business and was, first I've had the great privilege of being with a man who's a being.
and not just a man, or it would have never worked. But we're both our beings, and we are our little beings, because your being is so playful. You know, it's like we're just in our beingness, and we just like call out names and, you know, love things, to just throw energy, love bubbles at each other. And I think anytime a woman, speaking what you spoke about, is challenged by male energy, you know, like this energy. Well, for me, I have the same, so I can fight the fight, but not really, you know. Is you just become your authentic self. When you bring your energy and your beingness up, like, you know, like even Hillary, if she were to just come out and be who she is, at any time anyone is who they are and just allows it out, there it is. Everyone's there to hear it. They feel it. And everything else is nonsense. Really. I mean, we all want what we're doing right now. That's all we want, right? And to just feel each other and experience. You know, being with Lynn as a man that's comfortable in himself. I love my intelligence for finding the right kind of man for as much fire as I have. I never knew I had so much fire. I just am who I am. Until I bounce off other people, and then I'm like, whoa, okay. But I didn't know. You know, so it's that, you know, we go to people to find our own heart and our calmness and our gentleness and our being, you know, because our beingness is like, that's the, I mean, even though I'm a female, I can, if I'm talking to a certain type of male, it lights up different energies in me, that's all. I can be more masculine, or it doesn't even matter, it's just you have an exchange. And yeah. And I do understand that women, I mean, they say it's like we spiral when we think we're spiraling, which is, it's a dance between men and women. I think that's why, you know, when Lynn said that it's a cosmic play, it's a cosmic dance, because if you can figure this, you have to figure it all out. You have to learn how to dance with women, and we have to learn how to dance with men. And it's a dance. And I remember when Jack Cornfield, I think some of you might know him, in 10 Day Vipassanas, and he was all quiet and calm and been in Burma for years in silence, and he comes to the United States, it's in his book, and he says, and he meets a girl, and he's gonna go on a date, and every bit of knowledge and wisdom he had was triggered. You know, what movie do you want to see? And he was in choiceless awareness. And he's like, I don't care. And she says, what do you mean you don't care? You know, it's just that whole, it's like all the little things you have left. You know, it's like you got to learn not to be triggered, but to dance. I mean, I don't know. But we're happier, you know, like in the dance. And so what you were saying with whenever women, we're not characterized by men, did you say? Or defined? No, but that wouldn't even be possible.
I second that.
You really wouldn't. It's just there's we're all beings, and we express from different ways, that's all, you know,
And it is tricky. It's an interesting dance. And I loved what you said about when, you know, when you do get older but I'm thinking of going the other way now. But it's been really a pleasure to listen to each of you. It's absolutely beautiful. Everybody here has really showed your beings. So beautiful. So there are no men and women. I mean, there are, but it's just, yeah, who would like to step?
Okay, so, thank you. Thank you. You are the mystery woman who able to materialize and dematerialize from filming.
That's one of my better traits.
Spider-Woman. Okay, we're going to go to Elizabeth next. I do want to just add one more thing to the soup, even though we didn't get too far into this one. So, you know, we're speaking about men who have sought, it was said, good luck, but men who have sought to define the sacred feminine. That is, I think that's really true that happened in history. But I want to direct the conversation to what is happening now, because as we began, you know, things are they are shifting in a very unusual way. Just look at this political election. So it's really Hillary Clinton who is running as the cool and cerebral person, and Donald Trump is unabashedly working from gut instinct and emotion. You know, so I think that's come out. So what is that about? Even though at the same time that came out, there's still this sexual politics that is going on. There's still a painting about what it is to perform. You know, certain words have come out, like look and stamina. So what is going on here? What is going on? So I want to, basically what I'm saying is, if it's true that men painted women to be feminine in a certain way, how is that shifting now? And how is the sacred feminine going to come to the fore now? What needs to happen? And this question is on the table for everyone.
We all have access to all of them. Take genderizing off of them and just say, here's a pool of possible attributes or possible, what would you say about whether you're earthy or whether you're abstract or whether you're coming from your heart or whether you really are very good at the functions of the intellect, or both. Maybe you're both. What if we just say that what if we engaged with each other as everybody is possibly any of this, and how do you do it? So in the way that you two have worked it out, or the way that Bob and I have, or however. And there's a saying that I remember coming from Native people, that men talk to say something, and women murmur to keep life going.
Whoa.
And I love that, because I have been in so many circles with women who, and we keep life going. And I love hearing men who have something to say. But idea that there's something more feminine about coming from the heart than a man, than masculine. The masculine heart, I've been privileged to live with a masculine heart and masculine nurture. And I wanted that the word husband and husbandry is in here. And the whole male way of nurturance and diaper changing and whatever's needed. Why can't we have the new game be who you are and enjoy the way that you express these things as a man? How lovely. All that heart and all that warmth and all that keen mind and all that physicality, the way you do it. It's so delicious. And we be it the way we do it, which is also delicious. That was just the thought that I have about the divine feminine was also defined by men. Who is the Shekinah? Who is Mary the Mother? Who is Mary Magdalene? Who is Kuan Yin? That's all defined by men.
Right.
Watch. We'll show you who the divine feminine is. And having been raised for all these decades in the Kabbalah and in the and in a dispensation that it very much incorporates the Tarot in a certain way of seeing, there are no attributes that in the course of her moving up and down the tree of life, that there are no attributes that she does not have her version of. And that's been such a great teaching for both Bob and me. And when we found teachers, which he came to him in a dream, it turned out to be a couple. So that we had the speakings of a man and the speakings of a woman. And it's been just a huge gift to us.
We'll go to Robert and then back to Mark. I mean, Joseph. Something.
Am I Joseph or Robert?
You're Joseph.
Oh, I'm Joseph. Divine feminine, you know, by the male patriarch, you know, and I think that's an important thing to bring into the light. And but I believe very strongly that now it's the time for the divine feminine. It has nothing to do with gender. The divine feminine is in all of us. And I just wanted to make that point when you brought up the question of, you know, our search for the divine feminine, and the history of destroying of the divine feminine. And I think that's what's the tipping point right now in this election, and not only in this election, because this election and what's happening here is being viewed globally. This is absolutely a global phenomenon, you know, and I've had the opportunity to be in global settings and asking, you know, about Trump and about Hillary, and they're both falling very short. And it's not about Hillary being part of the system. What I just found out in this circle, it's about Hillary showing her authentic self. And when she shows her authentic self, and when she wins, if she wins, if she doesn't win, I have alternate plans about being in this country. So I feel good about that. But if she wins, you know, that she will turn things around by bringing her authentic self and showing the world that, you know, that we can have a leader in the sacred feminine position. We have a lot of feminine leaders out there in the world, you know. Not one of them I have discovered has brought out their authentic feminine, sacred feminine self. But that's just my judgment. I hope.
And to Martha.
That's a good one.
And then also, you go first. Yeah.
I think we forget that the American population is really is only 5% of the world population. And that we've been brought a long way. That it is a privilege to sit in the circle. It's a privilege to even consider what we're considering. And I think we have a responsibility to rise above what's happening. Someone else said that earlier. It's all, to me, a metaphor. It's a very loud conversation about duality and how it works. And I don't think we can then say duality is bad and something else is good. It's still, then it's duality still. So I really like what Ken Wilber has to say about our growth and development in that we expand and include. So someone else mentioned the compassion. To have compassion for where others are in the path of life. And to, in some way, only be involved in the background, in the sacred place of the heart. To be pulled into the foray and to our internal two sides of the issues be at war is again, just our grist for self-development, our grist for self-examination, our opportunity to practice compassion. So I don't give it all very much importance in terms of where I put my attention on either or. I want to always go in the background. How can I include? How can I include each of you? How can I include my own personality and ego and what I've learned and what I haven't learned and what I need to learn and all that? It's like, just get still. That's what I say to myself. Just get still. Somebody's got to be in the background.
Thank you.
I'm listening to those words and I'm trying to understand. Can you give the stick back? Can you? No. Well, I don't know if I'm interpreting it in a way I'm not understanding. You know how with words we don't, I sometimes like to check out, is this what you mean by that? Or is that what you mean by that? So
Okay.
I won't do that right now. God, I feel like my head, my brain could, it just feels in experiencing things on so many levels that it's hard sometimes to find words and articulate. It's interesting because we have these hearts, we have this capacity to know that we are one and that it is through that connection of love and energy of the heart and of love that all is well. And we are here in this experience of this planet, right? In all its dualities and all its separation and all its history. And then there's these questions of, okay, so are we, how many times have we played, our individual energies, souls, whatever you want to call it, has come back and been in this process, this dance, this game, this whatever, this amazing thing that we're doing. How many times have we done that? And how many costumes have we been in? And how many, so we run that through our experience that we bring to right now, present time, and the being that we're in right now. This life, for me, I feel like I've been bushwhacking on the front lines about this issue on some level. And what does that tell me? What has that experience been? Sitting in the circle, having spoken the second one, being new to this circle, I felt a little uncomfortable later that I wasn't, I kind of was a little bit more of the jarring maybe thing, and I'll explain that in a second. But I have lived this lifetime pretty much not having, I moved here less than 2 years ago, and nobody really knows this in the new circle. I very rarely share this about myself, but my 24-year relationship was with another woman. And partly why I don't share it is because I don't want to be pigeonholed like you're gay, you're lesbian, you will never have a relationship with a man. You will never be in a relationship with a man at this stage in your life. Because I don't know what that's been for me. I don't know if that's a label that makes me a certain whatever. But what it has given me is a perspective and an experience of not having male protection, a male voice that I can rest behind for every single situation, whether it's somebody that's coming to my door to plumb my sink, or it can go on and on and on and on and on and on. How much we can take for granted. And when I hear you speak about your beautiful relationship, and I see yours, and there's a part of me that has really wanted to embrace that difference of what men have in the world now, 2016, 2006, 1996. I've been doing this for a while. But I feel like my job has been sort of to illuminate on some level what this difference has been, and live without it. And live without it in a way that, I don't know, says, wait a minute, we can't just wash over what this story has been. And if we're really going to take it back, we have to really be conscious of all the little, and not just big, but really little ways it's been taken away. And I get tired of it. I would like to rest sometimes in the union, because I think it is beautiful. But it's not been my job. It's time for something, because sometimes I step back and I go, you know what? I just want to be like everybody else. Have this beautiful male-female thing that just, you can just grow from each other in that way. But I just sometimes go, oh man, I just can't, it's like I want to take that on, and too, it's like I can't, become that invisible. I know myself, I have a struggle with becoming visible, and I know in a male-female relationship, and any ones I have had, that happens. And so, maybe that's part of it, but I know I've been bushwhacking. I've been bushwhacking about the lesbian and gay issue, and I've been bushwhacking about the male-female issue. And I don't want to talk too much more, but it's like what's happening in the race issue right now, where I think African Americans are saying, you don't understand. You have felt like you are not racist. But to me, and the questions that were asked in that center, I began with working with all along, where these women were saying, don't tell me how you're not a racist, don't tell me how you're not sexist, don't tell me how you're not homophobic, tell me how you are. Because that is the only way we're going to really get out of this mess. And, you know, my compassion goes to Hillary. I feel like she's been doing this for decades, and we're seeing in her being able to just stand there and not be authentic. I mean, those are her war wounds, and I want to have compassion for that. And I'm not going to expect her to be authentic on that stage with Trump wailing on her. I think she did a really amazing job of not. And yeah, I think when she hopefully gets out of this cauldron, she will be able to show her more authentic, and hopefully we will be part of that process with her, allowing her to. And so, I just want to say, you know, sometimes the little stuff is big stuff, and it's hard to see the little stuff when we don't have to. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you for a very beautiful, rich dialogue, and as the moderator, I get to take it all in. So it's pretty powerful stuff. And of course, we're just on the edge of going. We could go deeper and deeper for days. I think this group can do it. You know, life is an amazing dance. You know, I came up here many times, and the dance of the feminine and masculine is pretty beautiful and pretty amazing. But all of life is that dance. I think you can look at politics that way too. You know, Democrats and Republicans are not as much enemy combatants as they are dance partners. And the proof is that they shift so much. So, you know, today's Republican Party is the Democratic Party of 150 years ago. So the parties are always dancing with each other and always shifting. And that's kind of the way all life seems to play out. So it's a beautiful thing, but remember, when we're in that dance, I love what's been said, because we cannot objectify the other. You know, one of the most beautiful things I ever heard from Ramana Maharshi was when he was asked, how should we treat others? And he replied, there are no others. You know, and that's really, I think, what's come out in this group, you know, in our dance toward authenticity, our dance toward that center, our emotional dance, our beautiful, heartfelt dance, got there in a very short time. So thank you for that incredible blessing. And may you be blessed in everything that you do, each and every one. Thank you.
And thank you to all the powers that have attended us.